Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to our series on Onshape. This is the beginning of Season 2. I hope you have been doing well since Season 1. I don't know how long it's been since you've watched Season 1. Make sure you have taken the time to go through Season 1 and review things as you need. Here in Season 2, we are going to dive into topics within Onshape that are specific to particular projects and along the way uncover some new things. So let's dive right in. Use whatever document you like, and let's start with a fresh Part Studio tab. And in this case, we are going to use the origin. The one thing that I neglected to talk about in Season 1 was this thing called a variable. Okay, and this variable, if you've done any sort of programming before, um, variables are very important in programming because you're saying that this value, this container for a value, let's say you do 3 times x, you can put in whatever value for x and get a different output. And in the case for modeling things, this is very important if you're not sure what the starting dimension is. And we kind of talked about this during Season 1. So um, let's just start using it. All right, find the variable, or you can Alt-C, type in variable. And like our other Onshape tools, there's a dialog box. It's sort of an order form. You're saying, hey, Onshape, I want to make a variable. And you'll see on the left-hand side, it is as a feature, and it is red to black because you have not given it enough information. We're going to keep it simple. We'll call our variable x, and let's just say 1 inch. Over time, your variables should have significance in their names. So you could do like diameter base, right? Usually programming language, you sort of have one string of characters, but maybe if it's a multi-word, you do a capital, or sometimes people do underscore. Come up with a good system for that. But we're just going to call it x, click the green check, ready to go. Now remember, on the left-hand side, the computer is always following these instructions in order. So let's say, let's create a sketch. Again, this should all be a review. If you're not sure, you can pause, take a look back at Season 1. But I'm just going to talk through things, assuming you know the basics. So our goal here, so let's take a step back. What are we achieving in this episode? This is episode 1. We're going to look at conic sections, and this is just an image Google result on conic sections. This is something that typically maybe 10th grade, 11th grade math. This I found is a nice visual. And we are going to make conic sections. And it's called a conic section because the conic sections are the sections of a cone. And so let's just think about cones. So pause right now. How would you define what the shape of a cone is like? And furthermore, how would you make it an Onshape? All right, you've had a moment to think about it. I can think of 2 ways. And the first way I'm going to do it is I'm going to actually jump to something a bit more complicated. I'm going to say it's a loft between a circle and a point. Okay, how are we going to do that? So let's start with a circle. All right, go to the origin. This time I'm going to use the origin so that I have sort of a nice reference point. Now, whenever you dimension circles and rectangles, you can start typing things in, but I'm just going to escape and then press the dimension tool. And how are we going to use a variable? We are going to do the hash brown or hashtag or pound sign. And you see, the moment I type that in, okay, that's the shift 3, it actually pulls up all possible variables. Very convenient. So I click that. Green check. We're ready to go. And I can go back to the variable and say, oh, I don't want the diameter to be 1 inch. I want to be 2 inches. Okay. Now, you might say, hey, why don't you just go in and change the diameter every time? Okay. Now, it should have updated it. Let's try that again. Okay, so if I modify this to, let's say, 3, right, Onshape modifies that right away. You're saying, why can't I just go in and change this every time? Well, if you use that same variable, let's say the diameter of the base of your cone, if that's related to other dimensions, you don't want to have to do 3 every time and then change it, right? Unless there's a way to link it through these constraints, which sometimes there are, then you're better off creating variables. And then with these variables, then you can you can define whatever letters and significant names up front. Make sure they're up top, because what happens is if you put them out of order like this, Onshape's going to say, hey, sketch 1 is the first thing, and there exists no variable called x, so make sure you are in the right order. All right, another thing, let's just create another variable. Let's say you have a variable y, okay, and let's say that's 2 inches. I advise you put all the variables up top, and I think you can even make folders now. This is a relatively new feature, variables. See, so if you've got like 10 different variables up front, you can collapse them into a folder, and it won't make this as cluttered. Okay, so we got our circle, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a plane that is offset. Let's say, I don't know, 5 inches. So again, you could do a variable there if you wanted to. Right now, just to get this demonstration up and running, I'm just going to keep it like that. So I got a plane. I'm going to create a sketch on top of that. And there, I am going to project the origin. What do I mean by project? Now, interestingly, Onshape, you'll see this tool. It actually has 3 different verbs for the same tool, and because all 3 verbs could help you understand. So you could use the origin, or you're sort of projecting it onto this plane, or you're converting it, right? All that's the same tool. I actually usually like to pick up the tool first, and then watch when I click the origin. You see it sort of shows you a preview. I could send the circle up there, or I could send the origin. Let's send the origin up there. And then click Show Constraints, and you'll see that this is a projected entity from the bottom sketch. And if we were to delete the origin, this would go away. All right, we set that up, okay? And do you see where I'm going with this? I'm going to do loft. I'm going to do the circle and the point. And voila, it connects the pieces. Now, Loft has all of these more complex settings and dials. I'm not going to touch that, but you have a cone. Now, with that, let's say you actually wanted to make 2 cones like this. For our purposes, we're just going to do 1 cone, but let's say you want to do the other cone with this sort of construction. And so what we can do is show the planes and say, hey, I want Onshape to take this cone, which is called part 1, and to mirror it around plane 1. All right, let's take a look at that. Go to mirror, or type Alt-C, mirror. It's saying, hey, what thing do you want to mirror? I want to mirror my cone. And what mirror plane? Put it around there. And then we'll be good to go. All right, and then you have those 2 cones. Now, interestingly, if you want to make it the same part, I think because this is touching at a point, let's see, can we do it? No, we cannot merge all. So let's just do new. Okay, and there you have it. Now, what would be a second way to create the same thing? All right, I'll give you pause. All right. Well, if you look at the side, you can see that there's symmetry here. You could just have a right triangle. All right, right triangle means there's a 90-degree angle, and then just revolve around. Okay, so that's what I'm going to show you next. And I'm just going to only make one part of the cone just to keep it simple. All right, we'll do the new sketch. So a new part studio tab. And actually, no, you know what? I'm going to make a side view. I'm going to do side view instead. All right, front view. We'll use the origin. And all you need is coincident with the origin, go up some distance. Okay, and you want to make sure it's right angle. So here's that inference. Of course, you could fix it afterwards too if you wanted. Okay, we know it's turned that translucent gray, so it is extrudable or revolvable. And then with the dimension, let's say we want that to be x. All right, aha, but you probably caught it. I didn't put a variable. For illustration purposes, I'm just going to add a value here. You can feel free to declare your variables like you saw in the previous Part Studio tab. Okay, we've got that, and all we have to do is go to Revolve, click the region, click Revolve Axis, make sure that's not red, click that, and there you go. We've got the cone. All right. So now let's take a look at conic section. You can read over this. And in the past, I actually would create different planes using these tools, sort of rotating them so that it could slice our cone in these certain ways. But I learned from a colleague a different way to do it, and that's always great to learn new ways. So what we're going to do instead is, let's just try it with one thing. We're going to go back to the sketch and see if you can visualize how this would be the side, the cross section of the cone. You see right here. So what we're going to play around with, and let's just try one. We're going to actually create a surface that more or less represents the plane slicing. And so let's just say circle. What is a circle? Circle is that it is a parallel cut to the base. And you saw what I did there with the inferencing. Okay, let's just try it with one. Now, when you're programming, when you're doing these things, try it with one first before you try it with everything. All right, now, you're wondering, what is that line going to do? Now, interestingly enough, OnShape interpreted it as making it a shorter cone. So I need to tell OnShape, hey, I want you to actually revolve this piece too. Okay? All right, now we have this line. And so now what we're going to do, and we'll see if the length matters here. So let's just give it a try. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that line segment that represented our parallel slice, and we're going to extrude. But now we're not going to extrude a solid. We're going to extrude a surface. So this is brand new. Click on that. And I don't know if it needs to go the full width. Let's find out. In terms of the length, you can click and drag, or you could say go to infinity and go both ways. You saw how second end position will go the opposite way too. Okay, so now my question, I'm not sure, okay, but we're just going to try. The fact that this doesn't extend to the whole cone, will it split for us or not? Let's find out. So go up to split, all right, Alt-C, you can find split. What do I want to split? I want to split the cone. You see right now, there's just one part, so we do that. What do I want to split it with? The surface. Let's see if it works. Aha! So you see, the surface doesn't even need to go all the way. All right, OnShape sort of interprets that as, oh, you're cutting it, you're slicing it there, and the cut actually goes through everything. Now, right now, you see that my surface is gone. That's because keep tools is unchecked. If I say I want to keep my tool, what is the tool? Tool is the thing that is splitting with. Then you can keep it that way. And for illustration purposes, I think I'm going to keep my tool. Green check to save. I'm going to rename. Oops. I'm going to rename the surface to circle because that's our parallel cut. All right, that seemed like it worked, so I don't know. Let's just keep trying here. We're going to go back to our sketch. Now, depending on sort of the order, we want to make sure that when we do the splits, all right, we define the right part that it's cutting. So let's just give it a try. All right, this is a good chance to sort of debug. All right, next thing is the parabola. Okay, I think this is where it's going to get interesting, but that's okay. Parabola, we say it's parallel to the slant. Right, that's what this instruction says, and that's how you can sort of visualize any parallel cut to the slant. So when we're looking at it here, we can kind of imagine this symmetric part. In fact, why don't we just visualize it here? Might as well. We're going to mirror within the sketch, pick my mirror line, and this way we just get a nice visual. All right, and then we're just going to make these construction lines so it doesn't get confused with the revolve. All right, so with that, the question is, how do we make the parabola? And I'm going to try a parallel cut right here. So I'm going to pick up a line segment. I'm going to not be construction. I'm going to eyeball it here, and I'm going to say, hey, OnShape, you see this line? I want you to be parallel to that. Let's see if this is going to work. All right, you see parallel inference, highlighting the orange line. Click, escape, click the green check. Okay, it looks like it's done some weird things. All right, that's okay. We are going to redefine our revolve to make sure that everything is revolved. Okay. And now we're going to create this surface. So you see how we're sort of going back and forth just because we're trying. We're not sure if it's going to work or not. Same thing, new surface. We're going to go through all, second end position, through all, and then give that. Okay. So we now have that. All right. And, you know, our conic sections, this is the circular part here. I am going to, depending on where you cut, you could have a certain number of pieces left. So I'm just going to say, well, let's rename the surface to parabola. All right, now, really, this should be like parallel slant cut because we're going to actually create the parts that show that surface area. But anyways, you can deal with the naming. I am just going to focus on splitting. I'm going to split this piece with this surface, and I'm going to keep the tools. Okay. Now we can hide the surfaces. Now you can see those parts. And when we finish, we're going to go to the assembly and see sort of all these parts in total. All right, I'm going to hide these other surfaces. Let's go back to our original sketch. Let's do the other two. Hyperbola. Okay, it's sort of an up and down cut. And so pick up the line tool, make sure we're vertical. Okay, intersects with the base there, 90 degrees, escape. Click the green check. We may need to redefine our revolve. That's okay, because OnShape is confused, so it just picks a direction. Let's extrude that surface. All right, we're going to extrude this surface as a cut. And once again, just go through all. And actually, we learned from the first one, we probably actually don't need to go through all. So this is more of just practice. So test it out. See if you don't go through all, if you just go some blind distance, if it still cuts the piece. Then we're going to split this part with this surface. Keep the tool. And we got another cut. So I'm going to rename, call this the hyperbola, and we've just got one more. All right, and hide the surface. Alrighty, we are almost there. And the last piece we are going to do, what did we miss? We missed the ellipse. Ellipse. So the ellipse is just sort of cutting sort of 2 points here. Yeah, 2 points here. So probably what would have been better is to actually order these. You see how it goes circle, then parabola? Circle, ellipse, parabola, hyperbola. And I actually started the circle at the bottom. So, this is fine. That way I'm not really giving you the answer. You can reorder your surface cuts differently. But I'll just finish it off. So the cut for parabola just says it is not parallel, okay, but it intersects both sides, because if it's if it's parallel to the base, it definitely intersects both. If it's parallel to the slant edge, it's only going to hit one slant edge. And so now we're just going to pick a cut like that, okay? So again, this is all going to be sort of a mess. That's okay. On shape, we got to redefine our revolve. That's okay. Okay, and the last thing we're going to do, we're going to do one more split. Or rather, we got to create the surface. I'm going to pick this entity. Oh, see, when I want to do a solid, it won't let me pick a line. But if I do surface, there you go. And sure, this time I won't go through all, because I think it will do the trick. So we created that. One last split. We're going to pick the part. Now in this case, we might need to pick multiple parts. Let's see. All right, let's take a look. So you see, you notice this, okay? This tests how aware you are of OnShape here. We're splitting it, but we're saying only split part 3. Okay. All right, that part. Okay, we got that part. It splits it, but we're not saying at the moment split this part too. If we are, then let's do this before and after. You see that full cut? But if I get rid of part 2, it only cuts that main part. And so again, I did it out of order, not intentionally. But really, you should start with the circle up top and sort of more gradual angle. That way you can get these distinct parts. So this is not quite what you want, but it's okay. That way I'm not actually giving you the full answer. All right, so let's say 5 parts was your final thing. Now you can jump to an assembly. And you can, I'm just going to delete this all. I could also start a new assembly. We could insert this Part Studio 2. Let's just insert the whole thing. Just click once, place wherever. And now you can reorient these pieces. These are your conic sections. Again, this is not quite what the final product is if you had it in the correct order here, but you can just get a sense of things. Okay. Now that you're just assembling parts. If you wanted to, instead create, let's say, some sort of like dowel pins where one side you extrude a cylinder and the other side is a hole. That way you can snap together like a puzzle piece. That's an additional thing you can do. And then you can sort of move these around just to make sure that they fit well. And actually, let's just do that real quick just as an example. I'm not going to do it fully. I'll let you sort of leave that as an open-ended question of how you might go all the way for the pins. But let's just say on this main piece, go back to the Parts Studio tab. I can just hide everything else. So hide other. I have this part. Let's say I wanted to create some pegs here. So I could click on that surface, create a new sketch. And once again, if you want to use variables, you can. With these pins, you probably want them to be symmetric and a nice number. So I'd probably create a variable that's like pinhole diameter, but let's say 0.25 is what we want. And let's project. I think that's the plane line there. Okay, and just mirror it over. Again, a lot of this is like extra steps, but it just makes it so that if you modify your design, it's easy to propagate those changes. So now what you could do is we can extrude, we can add to this. Okay, let's say we're just going to go, sure, an inch. We're going to add to it. And it looks like I didn't extrude my other side. Let's make sure we extrude that. You see that? That might be a little too much. So let's do like, I don't know, 0.25. 0.5. Let's try 0.5. Cut it in half. Right? And then let's check the assembly. It shows the part right away. Yeah? You see that? And so maybe we can make it so that it creates the hole there. And so this is yet another tool. Let's see how this is going to work out. No, where's part 3? There's part 3. Ooh, it looks like 0.25 is a little too much. So let's just do like 0.3. Okay. And what we can do, let's try this. Boolean. I'm going to say subtract, keep tools. So the tool, what's the thing digging it out? It's our part right here. Okay. Maybe I should have colored and named these. This is going to be our tool. I'm going to keep the tool. And then what's the target? What's the thing that is being targeted? So that's this other part here. Sure, let's give this a try. Target. Done. And now I'm going to hide this. Look, it made the holes. Now, with 3D printing, you might want to add a little bit of offset, but that's where you can play around with these values. By the way, Boolean refers to Boolean logic, true and false. That's why you have that Venn diagram. Okay, I think I have said enough here. Okay, go back to the assembly. You see our parts are reflected there. This is sort of the staging for the parts. Okay, hopefully this gives you a good sense of how you might create conic sections. I didn't do everything perfectly, but that's actually okay. That way you can sort of fumble through it. We went over variables and splitting parts, mirroring parts, and the Boolean operation. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.